It's the silence, followed by the noise. It's the welcoming brew around the table.
And the pounding adrenaline of your first call out.
From a plume of water bursting from the ground,
to being soaked in sweat from the heat.
It's successfully planning an event at short notice, and the pride of pulling on a shirt for the first time.
Today, it's the panic on people's faces.
Tomorrow, it's the support from the communities we serve.
It's feeling anxious about starting a new role, only to be supported and inspired by amazing colleagues.
It's comforting families who've lost loved ones.
And heartfelt thanks from those we have saved.
It's the gravity of shutting down an unsafe business to turning around the lives of vulnerable people.
It's the driving grotto that makes Christmas that little bit brighter.
And the humour that gets you through stressful times.
From training that pushes you to your limits.
Making positive changes and challenging the status quo.
It's feeling excited, included and exhilarated.
Yet having the space to feel vulnerable and exhausted too.
It's the memories that stick with you for life, the good ones and the bad.
It's a great feeling, serving your community.
It's great to be part of something bigger than yourself.
And it's great that no day is the same.
It's all of these things that make us who we are.
It's all these things that make us Nottinghamshire Fire and Rescue Service.
This is me.
This is us. And
this is our story.
Proud to be rated good by HMIC FRS.
It's the silence,
followed by the noise. It's the welcoming brew around the table.
and the pounding adrenaline of your first call out.
from a plume of water bursting from the ground,
to being soaked in sweat from the heat.
It's successfully planning an event at short notice and the pride of pulling on a shirt for the first time.
Today, it's the panic on people's faces.
Tomorrow, it's the support from the communities we serve.
It's feeling anxious about starting a new role, only to be supported and inspired by amazing colleagues.
It's comforting families who've lost loved ones.
And heartfelt thanks from those we have saved.
It's the gravity of shutting down an unsafe business to turning around the lives of vulnerable people.
It's the driving grotto that makes Christmas that little bit brighter.
And the humour that gets you through stressful times.
From training that pushes you to your limits.
Making positive changes and challenging the status quo.
It's feeling excited, included and exhilarated.
Yet having the space to feel vulnerable and exhausted too.
It's the memories that stick with you for life, the good ones and the bad.
It's a great feeling, serving your community.
It's great to be part of something bigger than yourself.
And it's great that no day is the same.
It's all of these things that make us who we are.
It's all these things that make us Nottinghamshire Fire and Rescue Service.
This is me.
This is
us.
And
this is our story.
Morning everybody, welcome to our full Fire Authority meeting here at the Joint Fire and Police Headquarters at Sherwood Lodge, Friday the 13th of December. Everybody is very welcome. Thanks to all members and officers who are present. I'm going to move straight into the formal agenda if that's okay. We have got a few persons who are appointed onto the authority today, which the clerk will pick up with, but the first item on our agenda is apologies for absence.
So we have apologies from Councillor Zadrozny, Councillor John O'Lee, Councillor Tom Smith, and from PCC Gary Godden. And today the Deputy PCC Angela Candola is stepping into the space and has the same rights as the PCC in terms of speaking and voting.
Brilliant. Thank you to the clerk. Any other apologies?
No other apologies.
Okay, we're just going to, with people's forbearance here, deal with some quick items now in terms of membership. I'm then going to go through the declarations of interest, minutes and chair's announcements, and then I'm going to come back for reasons that will become clear to the membership item before we move on to the rest of the substantive agenda, if colleagues are happy with that. And I've had a conversation with Councillor Upton and Councillor Hollis and Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner Candola before the meeting about the reasons for that. So just a few issues on item 2 under membership. I'll ask the clerk to just deal with the other appointments we've got to the authority.
So firstly, for today only, Councillor John Clark is replaced by Councillor Pauline Allen, and for today only, Councillor Nayab Patel is replaced by Councillor Gulkar on behalf of the City Council.
Thank you, Malcolm. Item 3 then, colleagues, is declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest from any members or officers in relation to any of the business on today's agenda? No, I'm not seeing any indications. Thank you, everybody. Item 4 is the minutes of the meeting that were held on the 20th. Sorry, Councillor Hollis, yeah.
So my father-in-law's in receipt of the fire pension.
Thank you, Tom. That's noted. Thank you. Anybody else? No. Item 4 is the minutes of the meeting held on the 20th of September, which are on the yellow pages in the pack. Are there any comments or questions in relation to the minutes? Colleagues happy that they're an accurate record? People happy to agree them? Yeah, they're agreed. Thank you. Item 5 then is chair's announcements. So just a few items to deal with, colleagues, here. People were aware that we sent a number of funding letters to members of Parliament in the area that obviously the service covers, and also to the Ministry for Housing, Communities and Local Government. The service has received a reply, and the Chief Fire Officer and Chair will continue to meet with members of Parliament to seek longer term support for Nottinghamshire Fire and Rescue Service, which obviously I know there is cross-party consensus on. Members will also see in reports today that the announcements in the local government funding settlement that will be considered by the Finance and Resources Committee in the new year, and obviously I know that people will be taking a keen eye on what the potential level of precept that the authority can set, etc., is given some of the ongoing budget challenges, and I will continue to do what I can as a Member of Parliament, as somebody who served on this authority, to continue arguing our corner down in Westminster and Whitehall. In relation to governance review, His Majesty's Inspectorate for Constabulary's Fire and Rescue Services has been consulting upon the future inclusion of governance arrangements for fire authorities, and as previously agreed and further discussed at group leaders meetings, a review of governance has now commenced, led by the clerk, and it's anticipated that a fuller update will be provided at the January members seminar, and any subsequent recommendations to be agreed at the 2025 Fire Authority AGM, which I think is in June after the County Council elections, which will obviously have an impact, pending the outcome, on the composition of the authority. Just on the members' seminar, members are again reminded that the seminar taking place on the 31st of January will focus on the CRMP, the Community Risk Management Plan, and financial position of the authority, which is obviously critical in the lead up to the budget. You should have already received an invite to allow time to plan your diaries. And as the authority is currently projected to continue financial challenges in the coming years, it is really important that people attend that seminar. And from my perspective, I've always found as chair it very valuable, people being in attendance there and sharing their views robustly and challenging and speaking on behalf of the divisions or wards that they represent in the city or county. In relation to the service awards, that took place on the 13th of November, again at the Crown Plaza in Nottingham, and it was good to see some of our members at the on the night. I couldn't get there because we've got parliamentary business, but I know it was a really good evening, great success, and again hearing some brilliant stories about the amazing work that people do, not just who work for the service but also in the community as well, supporting the work that the service does. So thank you to everybody as members who attended, and well done to everybody who was recognised on the night. Also on the run of awards, the service was shortlisted for 4 awards at this year's first Fire Magazine Excellence in Fire Awards, and we were delighted as a service and proud that NFRS was announced as the Emergency Service of the Year, a massive achievement, and in my view thoroughly well deserved, and it's a brilliant bookend, I think, to the phenomenal result that we had in terms of the inspection and the progress that's been made. So a huge well done to everybody, Craig, on behalf of the authority for what is a well-deserved accolade. The service also received 3 other nominations: our Service Development Centre team and Corporate Communications team for Teams of the Year, and Sophie Winterbottom, who was nominated for Most Influential LGBTQIA+ individual in the fire sector. And I know all members will want to join me. In fact, a number of members have already raised this with me this morning. We want to join me in thanking the staff for these nominations and for the success of those awards, Craig. And then finally, as we look to close for 2024 as Chair, I wanted to just share my thanks to all of you as Fire Authority members for the way you've continued to engage cross-party, robustly, challenging, but also the support that you give for the service, and to each and every single member of staff across the service. It's been an absolutely brilliant year for the Fire and Rescue Service, not just in terms of those awards, but actually in terms of the inspection and also the amazing work that's ongoing in communities. And I know that everybody looks forward to a successful and prosperous 2025 for our staff, regardless of the challenges ahead. And on a personal note, to everybody who works for us, and also to all of you as Fire Authority members, a Merry Christmas, and I hope that you all get a chance to have a well-deserved rest and break, because every single member of staff works flat out for the communities they represent in the city and county, but also you as Fire Authority members play a really important role in shaping the direction of the service. So thank you to all of you too. Are there any comments or questions in relation to Chair's announcements? Oh, and one final personal thing I wanted to add to Chair's announcements, which is another brilliant end to the year, is a huge congratulations to our Chief Fire Officer, Craig Parkin, for being appointed, in my view, richly deserved, as one of the Deputy Lieutenants to Veronica Pickering, who is our Lord Lieutenant in Nottinghamshire. Craig had an outstanding relationship with our previous Lord Lieutenant, Sir John Peace, and enjoys a very close relationship with the current Lord Lieutenant Veronica Pickering, who also enjoys a very close relationship with the service. And behind the scenes, as Chief Fire Officer, Craig's made a big contribution to civic life and public life in the city and county for many years as our Chief Fire Officer, but also as somebody who's passionate about the area. He's proud to call home, and I think it's absolutely brilliant that he's been appointed as Deputy Lieutenant. I know that he's going to play a brilliant role in shaping what happens in the city and county in the years to come. So massive congratulations on behalf of everybody, Craig, on your appointment.
Thank you, Chair.
It's brilliant news. Any comments or questions in relation to Chair's announcements? Roger.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I would, on behalf of my group, like to echo our congratulations to Craig on his appointment as a Deputy Lord Lieutenant of the County of Nottinghamshire and the City. And equally, the points you've made, it's been a good year for the Nottinghamshire Fire and Rescue Service, in our opinion, and particularly the Emergency Service of the Year award. I think that is excellent, very well deserved, and congratulations to all staff throughout the service. And the other awards that you mentioned as well, but I think that is the jewel in the crown, as they say, naturally, and well done. So thank you. Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Upton. That's very much appreciated. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Khan, and then I'll come to Councillor Winter, Vice Chair. Councillor Khan.
Just pointing.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Winter.
No, I think it's just to echo what you said, Chair. I mean, firstly, Craig, I mean, it's absolutely well deserved. And when you called me to tell me, you know, and it just says a lot about the fire service as well, I think, in terms of your leadership and actually the work that you do. And to have been at the awards where we were presented with the Emergency Service of the Year was a real honour and privilege to be there with staff. And I think the direction of travel of the fire service over the number of years, obviously I've not been around that long, but I think, you know, it's it's well deserved and a really good way to end the year. And then to be part of the staff awards and the bravery, and actually not just of the staff, but some of the stories of the volunteers. It's absolutely amazing. But what people go up and beyond when it is not even their call to do so. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Winter. Anybody else? Councillor Butler?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. To echo those comments, but also I had to smile at a comment that Craig made when he was telling us about winning the award, the fire service winning the award. His expression was, he doesn't chase awards, and we don't, and we do the job. But isn't it it's a great reflection on the excellent work that is being done and has been done and is being done by the authority. So just our congratulations, but for the fire authority and plainly for Craig as well from a personal level. Well done.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor Butler. Anybody else? No? Okay, we're just going to return to membership with colleagues' forbearance, and then we'll get into the rest of the agenda items. So I just have a personal announcement to make, which I think is anticipated, because I think I've raised this in here before, that given my commitments now as a Member of Parliament and for other reasons, I've decided that today is the appropriate time for me to stand down as Chair of the Authority, and my intention is to stand down from the Authority after today's meeting, but I will stand down in today's meeting shortly. I will ask the clerk to call for an election to replace me as Chair, and also pending what the outcome of that election is, we may need to elect a Vice Chair for the Authority as well. Obviously, being a Member of Parliament is a full-time job and a full-time focus. I thought it was very important for there to be a transition period after I was elected as a Member of Parliament. It wouldn't have been right just to walk away from the Authority given some of the challenges that are ongoing, but I think this is an appropriate moment for me to step back from my role as Chair. So I just wanted to say, which I've said as Chair's announcements, a huge thank you to everybody currently serving on the Authority, but who I've served with previously, for the way that you've engaged in the debate. I know there have been difficult discussions at times over the last few years, but I've always found everybody without fear or favour on every side of the chamber here, whatever party you come from or none, to have engaged in a courteous way, sometimes a robust way, but actually I've enjoyed the relationships I've had with everybody. I've served on the Fire Authority since 2013 when I was first elected as a county councillor right throughout, and I was chair for 4 years of the HR committee immediately since, from being elected in 2013 through to 2017. I vice chaired the Authority after Councillor Polk was not re-elected in the county council elections for 2 years until 2019, and I've been the chair of the Authority from 2019 through 2024. And I have to say, hand on heart, this is one of the best organisations I've ever had the privilege of working with, but also helping to lead. It's full of absolutely remarkable people, both on the front line as our firefighters, but also people who work in the other services that perhaps aren't seen as often, and I remain immensely proud of all the work that the service does and that you do as a fire authority. And you have my absolute solemn promise that as Member of Parliament I will continue to argue vociferously for the service and for the hard work that our frontline personnel do. I have nothing but admiration and respect for each and every one of them. I've enjoyed working with two Chief Fire Officers, John Buckley, who I had a brilliant relationship with, and now Craig Parkin. And actually Craig and I worked together when I was chair of the HR committee when I first started on the Authority for 4 years, and then came full circle now as chair to work with him again. So I've had a brilliant time here. It's been testy at times, but I'm very, very grateful for the relationships. I'm also incredibly grateful for the personal support that Leanne and Lorraine have shown personally to me as members of staff, all of the senior officers, Craig, you particularly, and every single member of staff. And just particularly wanted to say thank you to Malcolm, who's been an outstanding clerk, and at times there have been trials and tribulations in terms of how we've dealt with things here in the Authority, and to have somebody like Malcolm at your side, we're very lucky to have him to talk us through how we make these decisions, has been brilliant. So thank you on my behalf. I've really enjoyed my time here. I'll continue to be a champion of the fire service and the fire authority, and I think at that juncture I'm going to ask the clerk to take nominations for chair of the fire authority. Obviously this will get us to the end of the municipal year. There is a county council election in May, so we only have a few short meetings left for the full fire authority, and then obviously there'll be a deliberation for city and county councillors after the county election about what then happens in your next municipal year, pending what the outcome of the county council elections are. So I'm going to hand over to the clerk to ask for nominations for chair.
Thank you, Chair. Could I have nominations for chair, please?
Any indication of nominations? I'll nominate Vice Chair Councillor Winter.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder?
Yes, I would like to second it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other nominations? Is that agreed?
Yeah.
I think that's unanimous.
Agreed. Councillor Hollis?
Can I speak?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I just really wanted to put on record, Michael, the thanks to you, really. I think you've been a really fair chairman. I mean, I've seen a couple of chairmen during my time on the Fire Authority. I've certainly felt very included, and I'm really pleased now you've ended up in Parliament. You know, obviously being an independent, I have the beauty of picking and choosing which Tories and Labour I like, but I do actually, I've always admired you. I think you speak very well. I think you're very passionate about Nottinghamshire and obviously particularly Gedling. And I'm pleased that, obviously, let's be honest, the Fire Authority is politically balanced, and I'm pleased with the stuff that you stuck to your word and everything that you promised Jason and I when you asked us to support you as the chairman. You stuck to, and things like reopening Ashfield Fire Station, all those other things, and I'm really pleased that they came to get together, and I'm hoping that you'll carry on that kind of honesty and work with your work in Parliament. That's the positive, and I do really want to put that on record, Michael, because I know we always speak privately, but I think just to say that I think you're doing a great job, and I'm pleased that you're now going to be able to take that experience to Parliament, and I hope one day actually fight for the Fire Authority in Parliament, which will be hopefully great as you get more experience. The only disappointing thing I do think it's important to raise is it's likely that the numbers in the Fire Authority will be the same after the county elections. And the first I heard of you standing down was today, and it's a bit disappointing that I think the Labour group have just come today expecting Jason and I to support Audrey. Being truthful with you, we don't really know. I don't know what she thinks about Ashfield, and all we want to achieve is the best thing for our district. And so it would have been nice, and I hope with that kind of marker that you'll maybe care about us enough to at least speak to us before 5 minutes before the meeting starts when you want to vote next time. And that's all really I have to say. But anyway, thanks for what you've done, and I hope to continue working in a positive way with whoever's going to be the chairman at the end of the AGM next time round.
Thank you, Tom. I appreciate your kind words, and let me just say we've always enjoyed an honest relationship. This is a personal decision, and it's a personal decision that I've agonised over when the right time to make the announcement was, for good reasons, and I hope you'll take that in good faith. This is not something about trying to spring a decision on people. It's a personal decision that I've taken for very personal reasons, and we all around this room at some points in our life, for reasons that sometimes are outside of our control, will have to take personal reasons, and sometimes not at times of your choosing. And that's the way that I've exercised this decision, and I will ask you to accept that decision in the way that it's been taken. Tom, absolutely accept what you're saying, but if we're going to have an honest conversation, it relies on me being honest back with you. It's not a decision that anybody else in the room's taken, it's a decision that I've taken, and it's a decision I've taken not just because I think it's in my interest. I've taken the decision because I think it's the right time in the interest of the authority and the service, and that's the reason I'm here, and that's the only reason I've ever been here as the chair. That's only ever been my interest. And I think you've heard me say, but I'll restate it for the record, that I will continue to support the authority in any way that I can. I absolutely understand and appreciate that the relationships are delicate in here. I think I've always been fair-handed and even-handed and respectful to everybody on every side of the aisle in the chamber. And if I can continue to play a supportive role in that as a Member of Parliament and somebody who's got a passionate interest in the work that you do, then I will continue to do that from a distance and in a slightly different role. But I'm very grateful for you sharing your honesty this morning. Councillor Wilson.
Well, yes, thank you for all the hard work and leadership and passion and, as you say, fairness and even-handedness as a chair of this Fire and Rescue Authority. Our group thanks you for that, and you'll be greatly missed, and I wish you best wishes for your future endeavours, particularly as an MP, and very comforting to hear that you would say you will carry on your passion for this sector and champion it in the House of Commons on whatever issues that are relevant to it, because I haven't been here that long, but I certainly get the feeling that you are passionate about this sector. As you say, you've been on the authority for quite some time, and I think being in the House of Commons is a good place to fight for various issues that are coming down the track for this sector, are they not? So thank you on our behalf. We will continue to be a group that is a critical friend, if you like, and I think our role is to act as a challenge and question certain issues, and that's good, I believe, for democracy. And as you say, you've been even-handed across the table, and thank you for that, and all the best wishes.
Thank you, Councillor Upson, and thank you for the way you've engaged in your time on the authority and your group, and actually a number of your predecessors. I've enjoyed the rewards challenge, but what I've always enjoyed is the courtesy of the relationship as well, and I think I've tried to be as courteous as I can, and I think in return your group always have been as well. And actually, if this service is going to get the best for the city and county, it relies on people working together, but also recognising the talents that everybody brings in the room, and that's what I've tried to do. So I'm very grateful, Roger, for your comments, and wish you and the group the best of luck as you continue to play a role in making sure that the service is improving. Thank you, colleagues. So I think we've got agreement on a new chair. So huge congratulations to Audra. I've really enjoyed working with this vice chair. Audra and I have known each other a long time, and she will do just to assuage any concerns anybody might have, an outstanding job. And she's not just somebody who's a city councillor, she's somebody who's fiercely passionate about the city and the county. I think you're going to do a brilliant job, brings a significant amount of experience in scrutinising and challenging the city council to improve, and a wealth of other experience that people will get to know, and he's a very nice person to work with. So a massive good luck and best wishes to you, Councillor Winter, as you take over the chair. Yeah, of course.
I think it's probably just to address Tom's point. I don't know you either, Tom. So let's be honest about that. But what I do like about the Fire Authority is that it is balanced, and it's about the service, it's about the people, it's about the county, and for me, I will continue to be an inclusive chair, because fundamentally it's about the citizens of the county, whether they're Ashfield, whether they're in Nottingham, and I will work constructively with everybody who sits on this committee. I've actually enjoyed the work that I've done far more than I have done some of my city work, if I'm being totally honest, at the moment, and I think there is a lot still to be done, but I'm actually proud of actually being vice chair and the support that I've got from Michael over the past few months. So with us collectively, that we can still strive to do more. So I'm actually looking forward to it, and actually looking forward to the challenge as well, Tom.
Thank you, Councillor Winter. Just to deal with this cleanly, rather than handing over to Audra at this point, Malcolm, do you want to take nominations for vice chair, and then let's just deal with this as membership, and then I'm going to hand over to Audra to carry on chairing the rest of the meeting. So over to the clerk to ask for nominations for the vice chair.
Nominations for vice chair, please, bearing in mind that as Audra is a city councillor, the nomination for vice chair has to be a county councillor.
I nominate Councillor Sybil Fielding.
Is that seconded? Seconded. Any other nominations? Is that all agreed?
Agreed.
That's unanimous.
Thank you, colleagues. I'm going to hand over to Councillor Winter to take the chair's seat. Thank you. And Sybil. Congratulations.
I'd like to say before I recommence the meeting that it would be a good opportunity at some point in the new year to probably be able to sit down with each and every one of you to actually have that coffee and chat, just to get to know you, and actually for people to get to know who I am and what I'm about, because I think that's absolutely important. And with that, we move to item 6, with the medium-term financial strategy. Is that going to be Beth?
Yes. Thank you, Chair. And, good morning, members. So this report provides an update on the medium-term financial strategy for 25-26 to 28-29. So the medium financial strategy builds on the approved financial strategy that was presented at December 2023, and it identifies the current financial position of the authority and looks at the estimated budgeted position over the next 4 years against the backdrop of national and local financial position, including the reserves of the authority. I'm now going to make reference to the actual MTFS document. So if you go to page 30 on your agenda pack, it outlines the purpose of the strategy and how the strategy aligns with other key strategies for the organisation. So it shows that it's key in linking in with the CRMP. The CRMP is currently under development and been out to consultation on, and obviously that will be finalised in February. And the two strategies obviously influence each other in terms of the CRMP has got to be developed within the constraints of the financial envelope that we've got, and obviously the MTFS then supports deliverability of that CRMP. Within that strategy as well, within all the strategies, it also clearly links into a number of strategies that sit behind the CRMP, which include the enabling services strategy, the efficiency strategy, peoples and culture strategy, safer communities strategy, and it also links to a number of financial strategies, which we come on to later in terms of the capital strategy and the reserve strategy. It also obviously takes into account local and national context and looks at our risk register as well. That all pulls together and influences what's in the medium-term financial strategy. In terms of, if you go to section 2 of the report, of the actual MTFS document, it talks about the economic context that we're working on in terms of the strategy. So it outlines where we are in terms of consumer price index inflation, which is currently at September is based on 1.7%, and that influences and links some of our funding links to that inflation rate, so that's why that's key. It also outlines where we are with the bank rate. So obviously we started the year at 5.25%, as of November it's now 4.75%, and again that influences us in terms of the interest rates that we get on our borrower investments and the rate that we can borrow at as well, which supports the capital programme. It also outlines where we are with GDP, and in turn that obviously then influences those bank rates and that inflation rate, so that's where that's key. Section 3 then of the main report goes on to talk about the unpredictability of the future year's funding. So as of the 30th of October, you'll know the annual budget took place, and then in November, towards the end of November, we received a local government finance policy statement, which was ahead of the provisional settlement that we'll receive hopefully next week. So as part of the announcements that were made, as those two announcements, in terms of the government grants that we receive, revenue support grant will go up by the 1.7% in terms of the September consumer price indexation. Services grant has been removed and been abolished, which for us was, we were expecting to be £76,000 in respect of that for 25-26. Minimum funding guarantee is likely to be a lot lower than where it was, so it was currently guaranteeing 4% core spending power. That's now down to 0% in terms of core spending power, so we're not expecting to receive any. That is in line with the assumption we were previously making anyway. In terms of we received some standalone grants, some pension grants. So one of the grants was rolled into RSG, revenue support grant, last year, so we will get that 1.7% increase in it. We also received additional pensions grant last year that sat alone last year, so we're waiting to see if that does get rolled into RSG this year, and then if it does, we'll get that inflationary uplift. It has been indicated by Home Office that will be the case, but obviously that hopefully will be in the settlement next week. They also announced a recovery grant, so as part of the October budget they announced targeted deprivation funding, which then as part of that policy statement became the new recovery grant. So it is targeted deprivation funding, so again at this point we don't know if we'll receive any of that or not, because it is being targeted obviously at upper tier authorities and unitary authorities that have got adult social care and looked after children where deprivation sits in. In terms of business rates, are obviously a key area for our income. So the announcements were made that will increase by Consumer Price Index at September in terms of the multiplier. Small business rates, the multiplier is being frozen, but we will get compensation for that in terms of Section 31 grant as in previous years. In terms of council tax, one of the key announcements was that we have been given that key flexibility in terms of having that maximum increase at the higher of either 2.99% or the £5 flexibility. So the report does go on to identify what the impact of that is in the table 1 of the council tax options. So we make a number of assumptions. We've got an assumption made around our council tax base that will increase by 1.35%. At the moment, that assumption is remaining the same. We will get further information on the council tax base in January from the billing authorities, but for the time being, that assumption is still remaining as it is. So that would create for just over £400,000. Then in terms of the actual increase in rates, if we increased it by 1.95%, that would create additional £600,000. If it's 295%, it goes up to just under £1 million. And if we have that £5 increase, it goes up to £1.7 million. So the £5 increase generates about an additional £700,000 on top of the what we get under the 2.95% increase. Part of Section 4 of the report goes on and looks at different issues that are impacting on the medium-term financial strategy. So as I've touched on, obviously the CRMP developments is key in where we target our investment within the strategy. So at the moment there is a limited amount of development and investment been assumed to support the CRMP. But obviously in the next few months we'll be working through where the priorities are as the CRMP gets developed and building more investment in. This section also identifies the efficiency strategy. So previously we've had the Future 25 efficiency strategy. That strategy has been closed. A closure report was presented to Policy and Strategy Committee on the 15th of November, and the process or the areas for the efficiency strategy going forward are outlined in a table. So the areas that we're going to be targeting in terms of efficiency are looking at commercial and income, and within that considering fees and charges, maximising grant funding opportunities, and looking at our estates leasing agreements. We're going to be looking at our asset management, so looking at the estates utilisation and fleet review, looking at best use of existing resources, so through procurement and contract management, through service processes and reviews, and through digitalisation. And then looking at the last theme, financial management, so we've got to renew our insurance provision, so we're going to look at the options around that. We're going to look at the minimum revenue provision and how we, if any scope for looking at the capital charges. We're going to look at introducing the financial appraisal model and looking at improving financial literacy, which will all generate efficiencies. The report does highlight other areas and other issues that we consider. So we're considering obviously that in terms of the corporate risk register, the outcomes of the inspection, and later there's a paper on that discusses pensions in more detail. So obviously that's a key area of risk for us as well in relation to pensions. Pay award is obviously another significant area. So at 4.2 in the strategy, it talks about the current assumptions being made for the pay award. So the previous pay award for 24-25 was 4%. The current assumption in the 25-26 onwards plan is 2% in terms of the grey book pay, and that's based on national assumptions and based on the CPI rate at this point in time. In terms of the Green Book staff, so that was settled in this pay award for this year was settled at a flat rate of 1,280, which equates to 3% across all of our staff. So that's been the same assumption that's been used for next year, because there's no other further information at the moment other than we think it'll be a flat rate again. One of the other key areas of the announcements that were made, so in the first announcement in the budget announcements, was the increase in national insurance contributions. So that's the increase in the rate and the changes to the threshold. And it is expected that that will be funded. It has been announced that the public sector it will be funded, but it doesn't say that it will be fully funded, and how that gets distributed, the funding gets distributed, still to be clarified at the moment. It was hoping that would be in the provisional settlement next week, but it's been highlighted that I don't think it is going to be confirmed in the provisional settlement. It's likely to be the final settlement. The report then goes on to identify other areas, so obviously we're looking at investing in technology capabilities. In terms of outcomes from the Grenfell inquiry, we currently get a fire protection uplift grant, so again we've got no confirmation of whether that will continue yet into next year. Again, that might be something that's in the provisional settlement we get next week. The Emergency Services Mobile Communication Programme, so that's a national scheme, and we're currently holding a little bit of funding in our balance sheet that we hold up for a regional basis. That programme is starting to get mobilised again, so it could be that we get some more funding towards mobilising that, but it is a long-term project. So in terms of the MTFP, so in section 6 of the report, it outlines the implications of that on the MTFP going forward. So going back to the February report when the budget for 24-25 was set, and the outline MTFP was put forward then for 25-26. The central case was that we'd have a £1.9 million gap for 25-26 and a 1.5 gap the year after that. So a number of changes to assumptions have been made in terms of those funding things we've just gone through, in terms of reviewing where the budgets are currently and looking where we've currently got underspends and building some of those underspends in by reducing the budgets. And we've built in some development as well in terms of the CRMP in other areas where we know we've got cost demands and pressures. So the central case for that shows that actually we've now forecasting a £1.2 million gap in 25-26. So that compares to that where we were with that 1.9 and assumes the 2.95% council tax increase. So we have sort of closed that gap in terms of generating sort of £700,000 worth of savings or net savings. Table 4 of the report then shows the best case scenario. So again, that assumes the same assumptions in terms of the 2% pay award, but it includes the £5 preset, and that just shows that gap would then go down to just under £500,000. And there is a worst case scenario that shows if the pay award was actually settled at a higher level at 4% and assumes the council tax is taken at 2.95%, that would be a £1.7 million gap for next year. What is key to note, another announcement as part of the budget and the policy statement that was received is that the fair funding review is now back on the table and being expected to be implemented for 26-27. So the fair funding review was first looked at in sort of 2019 and has been delayed since then, and that will also have implications on the reset of the business rate system as well. So the gap for 26-27 and onwards has increased, and part of it obviously relates to changing assumptions, but it also relates to the change or the impact of that fair funding review. And obviously more information on that fair funding review, possibly in the provisional statement, and then going forward next year in terms of consultations and what that looks like. So the strategy also includes then as appendices the capital strategy, so that's outlined within the report. The key things in terms of the capital strategy are, so obviously the capital strategy impacts in terms of the revenue budget, in terms of the capital charges, that where we're borrowing to fund the capital programme, that impacts increases the revenue budget. Previously, we've had a target or a minimum ratio that's been set of 8%, looking forward over sort of the next 10 years ahead of where we'd be in relation to that relationship of 8% of the costs of our overall net revenue budget. We are proposing to remove that target. It was set in 2008 so a long time ago, and when we were sort of operating in a different climate and with different environment completely, in terms of we were until 2013 we used to get government central capital grants, and we don't obviously get any capital grants now, so everything is falling on being funded by borrowing basically, whereas it wasn't previously, so that rate is out of date. So we are proposing to remove that. But what is key going forward is we still do need to obviously manage the capital programme overall and look at the impact of the budget and consider that in totality of what that means and prioritising what our needs are. So the capital strategy also includes a 10-year capital programme. And it is an indicative programme, so in terms of 25-26, obviously that's firmer, but then going forward it is an indicative programme, and that's where, again, it is key, obviously, looking at the impact that has on the revenue budget in terms of the borrowing, and considering that in terms of where we are with our funding and what the budget gap is. So it will move. It is just an indicative programme based on what the ask is in terms of our fleet and estates policies and strategies and what the requirements are. In terms of capital as well, just going back to the covering report, there are 2 additions to the capital programme for 25-26, outlined in 2.22 of the covering report. So that is the Access and Inclusion Programme. So that's already a scheme in 24-25, but the current contractor for that programme has gone into administration. So it does mean that we've got to re-procure to complete 4 of the properties that are included within that scheme. So there is some additional funding been identified and added into the programme for that. Further information will come back to members as that procurement process takes place, and we can have more clarity on that amount. But an indicative amount has been included in the programme. And a new scheme has been added for the access control system replacement system, which is a key. It's the access system to all the fire stations. So that's been added in at 400k for 25-26 because the current system has become obsolete. It's not supported anymore. The last part of this strategy in this paper is the reserve strategy. So again, that's Appendix 3 to the MTFS strategy, and it outlines where we are with the reserves. So the General Fund Reserve is currently at £5 million, just over £5 million, and it's expected to be at that level at the end of this financial year because we're not relying on General Reserve in year at all, so it will remain at that level. A risk assessment has been taking place in terms of what that General Fund Reserve needs to be. So previously it was identified at £4.1 million. That's now moved. That risk assessment is now shown at £4.3 million. The key areas or the main risks that we take into account when we're considering that level of reserve is around pay awards again. So it builds in the fact that if we had a 2% pay award above what we're assuming in the revenue budget, what would the impact of that be? And that's allowed for within that reserve level. It also considers the pensions issues that we've got. So there's an allocation within the General Fund Reserve to cover the pensions issues, and there's also an element of it for risk of significant overspend. So again, the level of the reserve allocated for that's increased on the basis that we've as part of setting the 25-26 budget, we've reduced some of the areas and taken some of the underspends out that we've got in 24-25. So there's potential there that we could be more overspend. So that's been increased a little bit. So in total, the minimum level has been set at £4.3 million for next year for 25-26. In terms of earmarked reserves, so we're currently at the 1st of April held £5.8 million earmarked reserves. And there's been some proposed reallocation of that reserves as part of this report. So in table 3 and in the main report there's a summary as well of the allocation of reserves. So that's where we've reviewed them, and we don't need them anymore to be set aside because those risks have now been mitigated or aren't there anymore. And some of the reserves we've managed to contain the costs within the existing budget for 24-25, so we don't actually need to draw down the reserves in 24-25, so we can reallocate those. So there's a proposal that 202k is reallocated, and the main bulk of that will be reallocated to Sistel disaggregation costs, which is 172k, and then there's 2 new reserves being set up, one for domestic homicide reviews and one for the community advisory group. There's a lot of information there, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Bev, and thank you for the comprehensive strategy and covering report. I mean, clearly it includes a number of assumptions, and there's still a lot of uncertainty around some of the income, but we know it's actually going to have more scrutiny and more development at the Finance Committee. There are a number of recommendations, but if individuals have got any particular questions at the time. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. I do echo your comment about there's a lot of uncertainty, and the Financial Resources Committee will look at this early in the new year and come back to us. I make no apology for being a building surveyor all my career, and I'm back on my hobby horse of the Grenfell Tower inquiry and report, etc. From time to time I do raise this, and I can't find it at the moment, but there are some scribblings here, bear with me. Yes, item 4.27, 4.28 on page 41, Grenfell Tower inquiry response. To paraphrase all that, it says that further funding has not been confirmed at this stage. I think I'm right in saying it's probably 7 or 8 years now since that terrible disaster. You know, time marches on, and I just have a concern principally for high-rise residential in the city of Nottingham. I have none in Rushcliffe, thankfully, but I am aware that in Nottingham, correct me if I'm wrong, there is a large amount of inspections still to be done. And I just hope that that further funding is there, because of the challenge there to fund that sufficiently. There's an issue, I think, about capacity and is the skilled staff there? And also 4.28 talks about having a financial burden there for government creating a regional building safety regulator, and says funding not confirmed at this stage. There's a lot of ifs and buts there, but behind it all, I don't want it to slip another year. And when you look at the table at the back, I think I'm right in saying somewhere in there, there's about £15,000 earmarked for the next financial year. It doesn't seem an awful lot of money. I presume we're doing most of it in-house, and the 15k is presumably to engage and pay for specialist consultants outside the authority. A lot of stuff there, my apologies, but I'm just flagging up. Please can we keep Grenfell on the front foot? Thank you.
Yes is the answer to the kind of comment. It is really complex. There are things that we are doing operationally, so the response side of it as a fire and rescue service. There are government consultations that's led on from the previous government into this administration. There's the remediation of buildings and acceleration and contribution plans. So who's paying for the remediations of these buildings, and that's something that's agreed with Homes England and government and Home Office and lots of government involvement in that. And of course now you're covered by a mayor, and the Deputy Prime Minister has written to all mayors who have this purview about how they get involved to accelerate remediation plans. The reality from a fire and rescue perspective is we can advise and inform that about where the buildings are. We keep revisiting those buildings and whether we are happy that they remain, I don't want to use the word safe, in a kind of managed way so that we are aware of it. Also what's happened as well, of course, is that there are vulnerable persons who are more vulnerable in a fire than maybe I am. If I am, for example, able-bodied, so somebody has mobility issues but they're on the 14th floor, for example. So there has been some backwards and forwards for a number of years between National Fire Chiefs Council and government of the day around evacuation plans, and there's been some guidance issued and consultation around that currently. That adds to the complexity of are the people in when there's a fire? Are they visiting friends? And there's some work we've got to do there. So it is going to be a real challenge for services with these kind of risks. We know the buildings over 18 metres in the city. We know those. We know which ones are in remediation. We know the ones that have got a plan but may not have started. The other thing that adds to the complication now, they are looking at buildings in terms of remediation plans, 11 metres and above, that now come into scope for access to funding. Should they have other conditions as well that they are, they've got things like some simultaneous evacuations, and they've got other issues with that building. So it's going to be very, very complicated. I would sort of say the plan in the timescale to solve some of these things is incredibly ambitious. But we'll certainly be working with government department and the mayoral office. Damien is meeting on my behalf with representatives from the mayoral office, because of course that's with Derbyshire Fire and Rescue Service as well, with a view whether the mayor can bid for funding for some additional work, because we don't know where these 11 metre plus buildings are. We've got a register of buildings that is held, but we don't know if they are just car parks or if they got cladding on them or not. So we're doing some work with the mayoral office at the minute about additional funding and capacity. Your point about skills, that's been a perennial issue. Thankfully, we do not have a big turnover in terms of fire protection. We've got an incredibly skilled team, but they can only do so much. And the uplift grant that Bev has talked about in there, some services are getting grant and not spending it. Right, they're not spending it because they can't recruit people to get into those posts. And then it takes about 2 years to train somebody before they are competent to go out and do inspections. So they're learning and getting their qualifications before they're actually free to run. So it is a long-term issue, it won't go away. If I think from an operational perspective, because that worries people, and if anybody was to see this YouTube video, the behaviour of people in buildings is something else that we can't predict. So where you get a building where issues with alarms go off continuously, residents eventually don't evacuate. You can see them moving the curtains and just looking down at the fire engines. So our worry is that the public would not evacuate a building automatically, and then that would commit more firefighters to a risk, because we have to evacuate the building because people aren't evacuating. So you're also dealing with social human behaviour as well. The Building Safety Regulator, of course, is owned by the Health and Safety Executive, and that is in its infancy. It is still a work in progress, and through the National Fire Chiefs Council we're working with them and influence them as much as we can. We will be bringing back updates to members either at Fire Authority or Community Safety Committee around our progress and the work in that area, and hopefully we'll keep members informed as we can. It's also formed part of a report into the strategic leadership team about how do we track the recommendations from phase 2. I think, Damien, if I'm right, there's about 15 specific for fire and rescue out of about 53 recommendations for numbers in the total report. I've also written to all chief executives of all the districts, chief constable, the local resilience forum, and it was slightly out of date, the letter now, because it didn't talk about the 11 metres. I wrote it before that. So I've written to all of because there are recommendations for the local resilience forum from phase 2 report about their responsibilities. You may not have any in the county, 18 metres and above, but you might have some 11 metres and above in the county. So we've got a huge piece of work to be done. Long answer, very complicated, but in terms of keeping an eye on it, Councillor, yes, we are.
Thank you for that, and personally I would like the reports to come back to the full authority meeting so that we all hear where we are rather than keeping it
it is the intention to bring updates back to the full authority.
Yeah, thank you.
And I think I do share your points, Councillor Upton. It was raised when we went to the chairs and chief fire officers meeting as and a real concern for the fire authority. It'd be interesting to know what responses you've had from the chief executives with all the who you've written to. And again, I agree that we should actually come back to full fire authority meeting. Councillor Butler.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman. A couple of questions, actually. First of all, there's quite a lot of reference to council tax and the sort of favoured option possibly being the £5 bandy option, and I get that. And now, perhaps I should know this, and if I do, I've forgotten. But when we talk about a fixed £5 bandy increase, is that still done is that still done pro rata over the other bands, so your A to C? So does the £5 apply just to the band D, or am I being very simple on this?
It just applies to the band. Well, it applies to everybody. Everybody gets an increase, but the £5 is based on the band D. So it would be higher for different bands.
Sorry, say again.
Because you always talk about your council tax base in terms of a band D property.
Yeah.
So it is a £5 increase to the band D.
Yes.
But if you were in a lower level, it wouldn't be at that
That's
level.
just what I wanted to check,
it'd
really.
be a high,
So it would be pro rata on the A to C.
Yeah.
And then, what was the other one? On page, yes, right. I've lost it. Oh no, we've covered that one because Councillor Upton covered that. But there was there's a comment about the funding for this new national communications system that may or may not be coming in, and all these sort of question marks about it. And again, apologies if I've missed this, but were we not, or are we still not looking towards our own, changing our own? Is that the SISTEL? Because we've had a lot of discussion over the last few meetings, haven't we, about delays to that. So does one impact on the other? I can see you holding your head in your hands. but and I'm sorry if I've asked a really awkward question here, but it's just genuine, because we talk about our issues, but now we're talking about a national issue as well, and I'm a bit confused.
Well, I'll answer the bit. It's I suppose my visual response to it is the many years of anticipation about ESMCP. It's been going for about 11, 12 years now, something like that from its inception. I got involved in it as the regional lead for fire in about 2013. It was supposed to be the next generation, and we were supposed to transition as a fire and rescue service onto the new national network system in about 2019. The reality was that lots of suppliers and lots of technology were just not ready. The relationship around ESMCP and RMS, your authority's version, is that's our control room system that we will use. All systems will need to be compliant with ESN. So it's a national provision network, radio network, that everybody can access, whether that's a firefighter or a police officer in a building. So it's a blue light and other agency radio network system that all suppliers, whether it be Motorola, Saabs and another, can all tap into. So they need to be compliant to access ESMCP. So we are buying our system so we can talk to one another, but as nationally it has to comply with that standard. And they've just, I think there's some contracts have just been signed by Home Office and other government departments to carry on that funding. Bev mentioned in the MTFS around the earmark reserve. We are the earmark reserve for the East Midlands region. So that's not Nottinghamshire's earmark reserve, that's the East Midlands earmark reserve. We're still waiting to see what that means about mobilisation of resources, because we've previously got funding for part posts of roles, so a part post in ICT or a post of those kind of things. So we'll be looking with interest when the programme spins up, because they basically put it on pause for a while because it went to the Monopolies and Competitions Authority because the company that were providing it were making too much profit per day. I think it was something in the region of £1 million plus a day profit per year they were making. So that's been challenged by government, and there's some appeals around that as well. So it's very, very complicated. I hope I see it in my career. I hope I see it. And I'm mindful we are on YouTube, and if people see this, they might take offence to that. But, we're asked to consider it as a corporate risk, but I don't know what the ask is.
Wow. Yes, it is complicated, isn't it?
It is. Sorry for the answer.
Yes.
But you may understand my facial expression, Councillor.
The facial expression says it all, really, but that's a very helpful explanation, because you can see where I was coming from.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was worried that, in effect, we're possibly paying twice, or having to budget twice, both for the...
No, the system that you've agreed, which is common knowledge now, being Saab, they have to make sure that they are compliant in their system, and we need to seek assurances that their system can access the national network.
Thank you for your patience on that.
Councillor Bailey?
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so my question's regarding the Prudential Code, page 43, 4.39. I know we've spoken about the 8% limit, and it's set in 2008, and it's not suitable modern day, so to speak. I suppose my question is are the authorities looking to remove the limit? And is it necessary to remove the limit, or why don't we just change it?
Yeah, so we still will have a limit, because as part of your prudential code that we set each year, you set a target for that. Your debt charge is basically as a percentage of your net revenue budget. So in terms of that, we would still have that indicator as part of the prudential code. This has been like a long-term target that's been set, and to be fair, I'm not aware that other authorities have ever set a longer-term limit for it. They always do it on this annual basis and looking where they were. So like a current level of debt, I think it does say, the current indicator at the moment, I think it does say it somewhere in the reports, just over about 4%, so we're well below the 8%. But even in terms of, so if you think about where we are in terms of our budget at the moment, we've still already got, we've got a deficit even at that level anyway. So, going up to the 8%, not necessarily affordable anyway. So that's why it's not a suitable indicator really to have that there as a long-term indicator. We need to, like I say, consider the impact of the whole of the capital programme in context of the budget position we're in.
Yeah. Okay.
Any other questions? I mean, clearly this is obviously a likely budget position for 25-26, and it's going to be going to the Finance Committee before it comes back to us, so there'll be opportunities between now and then for members to email Bev with any other questions or observations you may have. It's clearly an important budget process that we're actually going to be going through. But that said, there are a number of recommendations that we need to consider. So are we happy to approve the medium-term financial strategy MTFE set out in Appendix A? Approve the capital strategy and flexible use of the capital receipt strategy contained in the MTFP. Approve the capital programme for 25-26, including the indicative 10-year capital programme for the MTFS. Approve the reserve strategy contained in the MTFS, and approve the minimum reserve general fund reserve of 4.25 as set out in the reserve strategy. Are we all happy with those? One more. And approve the reallocation of the earmark reserve as detailed in the reserve strategy as set out in the table below. We're all happy with those? Okay. Thank you, Bob. And we are happy with reallocation of the reserves. We've got the table below, and then the task of the Finance Committee to provide guidance on the council tax and the options of readdressing the budget deficit, and actually also approving members' allowances. Although I think they're probably fine. Okay. Yeah. I think as an observation, perhaps, Bev, I perhaps need to think of when we look doing this again. I think perhaps another way, perhaps having a briefing before we perhaps bring it to full board. Yeah. I think because there is a lot contained in here, and I mean, we were dancing around different pages, so perhaps we need to have a conversation about how we do it for.
That's fine.
Thank you for that and your patience. And if we can move to item 7, Treasury Management Mid-Year Review for 24-25, which should be a bit more straightforward.
Thank you, Chair. So this report provides an update on Treasury Management activity to date for the first half of the year for 24-25. So it covers the authorities' borrowing and investment and managing our cash flows and managing the associated risk with those activities. Section 2 of the report first gives an economic update. To be fair, most of that information I covered in the MTFS, so I won't take you through the economic update again. In terms of section 2.6 of the report, gives some indicators of where interest rates are being forecast to go. So you will see that it is being forecast that our interest rates will hopefully reduce in future years in the sort of medium term. And that's why at the beginning of this year we took on a short-term loan of £3 million, and we did it on a short-term basis because obviously we don't want to get tied into those long-term rates at the moment when we know they are coming down, and we'll continue to sort of manage the borrowing on that basis. We're not expecting to undertake any borrowing this year. We shouldn't have to take on any more external borrowing. Potentially going forward with that loan that's due to be repaid, we may take it again. It will depend on, we'd do a capital receipt in of £3 million at the end of the year, and if we receive that, we wouldn't need to take that borrowing out again. In terms of the capital expenditure, so the table in table 2 just outlines where we are in terms of our capital expenditure for this year. So again, the original budget was 8.2 million, that's gone up to 11.5 with the slippage in from 23-24 being added to 24-25, and our estimated outturn at the mid-year point was the £10.3 million. And as I've said, we don't intend to need to borrow. We'll be able to manage it through our internal borrowing in terms of this year. The CFR and operational boundary are set out in table 3. So our CFR is forecast to increase. It is in line where we originally estimated, and that's obviously influenced by that level of capital expenditure. And then it comes down with your minimum revenue provision that gets charged against that in year. And against that is that our external debt, so our operational boundary is expected to be set at £39.9 million, and our external debt's actually 32.9, so it's below that operational boundary. And in terms of the authorised limit, which is the very maximum we'd be prepared to borrow on the short term if we needed to do it, that's up to 44.6 million. So again, obviously we're significantly below that authorised limit. Again, in terms of the review of the borrowing strategy set out at 2.2, and that, again, as I mentioned, we don't really intend that we need to borrow. We can manage our sort of borrowing needs within our internal balances at the moment, because we are expecting that £3 million capital receipt, and also because we received £8 million to help fund the pensions remedy payments as they're made. So that's sort of sitting in our balances at the moment. So that's enabling us to defer any external borrowing and manage it through the internal borrowing. The annual investment strategy is set out at 2.19, and we continue to consider when we're doing our investments, the security of the investment first, the liquidity of when we get that investment back so it meets our cash flows, and then the yield that we receive on those investments. We currently have, or at September 30th, we held £17.5 million in investments, 10.5 were held within building societies and banks, and £7 million were held with other local authorities. And the detail of where those balances are held is set out in Appendix 2. So in terms of the interest rates we're achieving in terms of our investments, we're receiving just under 5%, so 4.89%, which compared with the average group is just slightly under at 4.95% for the average when we're doing benchmarking. In terms of why our rate's slightly lower than average, it's to do with that liquidity, and we're holding our investments at slightly shorter term dates, so we've got access to them should we need them, whereas they're compared with that 3-month rate, so we're sort of holding ours at just less than that. In terms of compliance with the Treasury management indicators, so that's set out in 2.3 of the report, and in table 4 of the report it goes through all the indicators. So the only one by exception to talk about is really the proportion of net debt to gross debt, where we'd set that, again, we set that with sort of forecast of where we'd be for the year. And we didn't anticipate getting the £8 million in for the pensions grant. Because we've got that pension grant in, it means that the net debt is lower, because that takes into account the investment levels we've got. So our investment levels are higher, so it's bringing that net debt down. So we are currently we're sort of below our target for that, because our net debt is lower. But the reason we have that is because it could be an indicator that you were borrowing to invest, but obviously we're not borrowing to invest. It is just because we've got that grant in that we didn't expect to get in. So it's just had an impact on that indicator. So again, I'm happy to take any questions on that.
Thank you, Bev. Any questions? Because this is a report for noting it's a mid-year review. I mean, I've got a question on. So the question about your last comment about the net debt and gross debt, is that technically the breach? Is that the breach that you're talking about?
Yeah. Against our, we set that indicator at the beginning of the year, but we didn't anticipate. It was set based on what we thought we'd be with our investment levels, and we didn't anticipate getting that £8 million in.
And if there's further delays on the sale of the whole headquarters, how are we mitigated against that? Thinking about, you're saying we won't have to borrow externally, will that have an impact?
So in my assumptions that I've actually built into the MTFS and the MTFP going forward, don't assume that we get the £3 million in. So, obviously at the point that we do get it in, we should then potentially have a saving against the budget that we'll settle by February. I might know that we've got it in and I can adjust for that. But at this point in time, I've not assumed that we do get it in.
Any other questions? I mean, this is a report for noted. Treasury management is always one that is not that exciting, but it's very, very important in terms of how, as an authority, we manage our cash. So if anybody's got any questions, please shout out. Failing that, members happy to note the report. Okay, thank you. Thank you. So if we now move on to the local firefighters annual pensions report 2024, is that you?
Yeah, that's me again. Thank you, Chair. So this is to report on the activities of the pension board up to the 30th of November 2024. So that's a year ago, the Policy and Strategy got a report on the activities of the pension board. So it's an annual update on the activities. So it was under the Public Services Pensions Act that created the governance around the pension scheme and created the local pension board. As part of that regime, the Fire Authority is actually the scheme manager, and then they delegate that to me as the head of finance, that I'm the scheme manager. But obviously that's why I'm reporting back to you, because ultimately it is the Fire Authority responsibility. Section 2 of the report first talks about the Constitution, that's attached as appendices. There's been no changes though to the Constitution, it remains as it has been. The report talks about the format of meetings and the meetings that have taken place. So there's a requirement to have 3 meetings during the year. So the last meeting was scheduled for November, but it got postponed, so it is now rescheduled to take place next week. So there will have been 3 meetings in the year. In terms of the board membership, so there's always an equal number of employee and employee representatives, and the chair rotates on an annual basis. So it's switched to April this year to be a representative from the employer side. In terms of board activity and what gets reported through to Pensions Board, it's always an update on the current pensions issues. The Pensions Fund Risk Register is always reviewed. There's always a report from the Pensions Administrator team. So West Yorkshire Pension Fund are our pensions administrator, so they always attend the meeting and give an update on their key issues. And we also look at the financial position of the pension fund. So a number of, you'll obviously be aware of the current issues in relation to pensions. So the first one relates to McLeod and the age discrimination that's been found in relation to the McLeod cases. And legislation was passed in October 2023 in relation to what the remedy was going to be in relation to that case. And we're continuing to work through the requirements in terms of implementing that remedy. So part of that is that all active and deferred members are due to receive an annual benefit statement and a remedial service statement by the 1st of April 2025. It was anticipated, they actually get produced by the pension administrator, by West Yorkshire Pension Fund. It was anticipated, because there's normally a requirement to produce the annual benefit statement by the 31st of August each year. So it was anticipated that this year that would be that annual benefit statement and the remedial service statement. And by that means it shows you what the impact is if you went back into the legacy scheme rather than the existing scheme. West Yorkshire weren't able to produce the combined annual benefit statement and remedial service statement by the 31st of August, which is because we've not done the annual benefit statement. That is classed as a breach in pensions regulations. So they wrote to members and informed them that they wouldn't be able to meet that deadline. They also then wrote to the pensions regulator on the 4th of October and reported the breach, and then I wrote to the pensions regulator and reported the breach on behalf of the Fire Authority on the 14th of October. So they've acknowledged that breach and have just said if they need further information they'll come back. We're not the only authority that's in that position. All of the there's over 20 authorities that have their administration done by West Yorkshire Pension Fund, so they're all in that position. And the issue is around their system needs updating and developing to allow those statements to be produced. They were anticipating that would be done, or hoping it to be done by the 31st of December. They've just recently, this week, provided a further update on that. They've now had the upgrade to the software to produce the statements, but they won't be able to produce them. They won't hit the deadline, that revised deadline of the 31st of December, but they will meet the deadline, the statutory deadline of the 31st of March 2025. And we are putting some comms out today in terms of our members, so they're aware of that position. In terms of the Matthews is the other case that's affecting the pensions, and another remedy exercise that's been undertaken in relation to Matthews cases. So this relates to on-call firefighters' pensions, and there was a first exercise where people on call were given the option to join the firefighters' pension scheme, which was between a period of the 1st of July 2000 for April 26. That's now been, under the second exercise, that's now been backdated to when on-call members became a member of the authority, so it could go back numerous years to sort of 1960s, 1970s, to when they became on-call firefighters. So they're now allowed to have that pension right back to those when they started. The first part of implementing that remedy was to identify all of those people that might have been impacted on that. So obviously a lot of people may have left the authority by now. So as part of that, we wrote out to everybody towards the end of last year, where we'd got known last addresses. We've also then gone on to use a tracing agent to identify those people that might be affected and who haven't responded, where we've written to the known last address. And then when we have had responses back with new addresses, or where we think we know the final address, we've sent out the letters by tracked mail so that we've got a record that we've actually sent to them, because we've got to demonstrate the best endeavours to trace the people that are impacted. So in terms of where we are with that, we've sent out 593 letters, 321 have returned an expression of interest, 13 have returned no expressions of interest. 78 have not yet returned and have passed the deadline, and we're waiting on 181 returns still. Then following on them returning their expression of interest, that's when we have to do the recalculations of what their pensions contributions would be and what pension they'd be entitled to. So we're working through those calculations. So obviously the first half of the year has been concentrating on identifying the people that are impacted. We're now moving on to the calculations. Now people are returning the expressions of interest. So in 2.37 it does say that at that point we'd issued 5 statements and 22 calculations. We're now, because we've just moved on to starting to do this, that is moving quite quickly. So like of today I've had an update and we've done 68 calculations. So now we're sort of, we've moved on to that stage. We are moving through it quite quickly. And as part of that we've put in more resource to meet those requirements. So we've taken on a deputy pensions payroll manager, and we've increased them from 3 days to 4 days a week, and we've got a pensions an administrator that's supporting. So they were initially supporting in the tracing work. They've now moved over and supporting the calculations, and that is working. So in terms One of the other areas the report identifies a key area of work is the pensions dashboard programme. So this is a national programme where we've got to connect to a national pensions dashboard, which will give people the ability to go in and view all their pension entitlements in one place. And our deadline to connect to that is the 31st of October 2025, and a lot of that work again is being done by the pensions administrator, but we've obviously got to work with them and feed into them in terms of the data needed and monitoring the progress they're making to achieve that deadline. So in terms of financial applications, section 3 of the report, it does identify that we're currently holding a 200k earmarked reserve in relation to pensions, and we're maintaining holding that reserve because there has been a lot of legislative and tax issues around both of the remedy cases, so it's prudent to keep maintaining that reserve just in case there are any implications for us that aren't funded by central government. And we have received some administration grant towards the additional costs of doing the calculations and doing these processes, which is what's helped fund that administration post and the increase in hours in some of the other posts. So again, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you for that, Bev. I mean, although it's a report to know, there are a number of concerns in the report, and I guess we would welcome an update report coming back to committee on this. I mean, I don't know what other members feel about it. Whether members got any specific questions?
Tom.
Tom.
I can never really say that's what it is. But I know pensions are a very sexy subject that we all enjoy talking about, but obviously it's really important, and particularly steps like with the retained fire service, and that we all need to be honest with ourselves against my own judgment, but we are going to be moving to more retained going forward, and I think we do need to incentivise people to do it, and it's not just retirees, if you like, people who are still able. We want to make sure we encourage everybody from all different backgrounds, particularly in Ashfield, white working class, and I think any sort of incentive like being part of a pension scheme is all things that make becoming a retained firefighter more important. I think I know the answer to this already, but I didn't know, Bev, with your expertise, if you had any inclination. Obviously, local government pensions are being completely shaken up, and I know we kind of sit as an aside to that here at the Fire Authority, but members will be aware that there's 86 currently local government pension schemes across Wales. That's going to become 8 mega funds, and the government are currently working through the legislation. First question is, I didn't know how that affects us, if at all, because I know there was slightly moves that we were going to be put as part of that in the reorganisation. I didn't know if you had an opinion. But I also think that, like with the work we've done with retained firefighters, I think members of the Fire Authority should also be considered with these kind of things. And I know the local councils and the county council are currently, and the LGA are currently writing something up for members. But members will know that the only councillors that are excluded from local government pension schemes are English councillors. And that was only changed by Eric Pickles in 2013. So if you're a councillor in Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland, you're all eligible to be part of the local government pension scheme. And I think we want to look around this table. This is probably more representative than most, actually, but most councils you look around aren't representative of the constituents because of things like, let's be honest, you can earn more money doing a normal job than being a member. And I think if we as a Fire Authority want to be representative and the local government want to be representative, I think we should be, as part of this big shake-up in pensions, that we should be putting our position on the table as the Fire Authority, that we want to make sure that we're accessible, like the rest of the allowance scheme makes up. But while I've got the attention of city members, I know they've not heard me say that before, so I think if there's anything the City Council can do to encourage the government to include reinstating members into the pension scheme, so we can make sure that we get people that represent the communities, young people included. I think that's important, but I didn't know how that fit in with the Fire Authority pension scheme, and if we are going to be part of one of these mega funds or not.
No, the firefighter pensions does sit separately to the local government pensions fund. So the LGPS does impact on some of our employees, obviously, because we've got Green Book employees as well that are part of that local government pension scheme. But the pensions board and the firefighters pension scheme, well, the pension board is specifically about the firefighter pension scheme, and I'm not aware that there's any muting about it being combined with the local government pension scheme.
On your point, I think city councils are obviously one of those. That's one of the things that city councils have raised. Whether or not it's something that will change after Eric Pickles, we shall see. But it's a valid point. It's a valid point. I guess for me, it's the financial implications. I know we've got a pot of money there, but do we think that's going to be sufficient based on the calculations that you're doing at the moment, or whether or not it may well be more than that?
No, I mean, at the moment, the remedy is being funded by central government, so I do think we should, it should be fully funded really in terms of implementing the remedy. It's just like there's a number of complications. There could be other case studies coming forward and things like that. So that's why the reserve's set there, just in case we need it, because anything else comes out the woodwork, because things do keep coming out the woodwork.
Councillor Fielding?
I just wanted to bring up the absolute diligence of the officers concerned and Bev and her predecessor over trying to ensure, once we'd got the remedy from McLeod and the other one as well, that it was delivered as timely, but being absolutely diligent that the detail that we got it right. And it has been it's felt a long and painful journey, to be quite truthful, and in all of it the concerns were that we got it right for the people, for the pensioners, for getting people's pensions absolutely right.
I'll bring in Councillor.
So to conclude then, on 3.1 page 98, the point you just made is £200,000 in our reserves. Hopefully the government will fully fund it. If they do, we'll be £200,000 better off.
Yeah, we'll be able to release the reserve. We don't need it, but it needs to sit there for the time being.
Yeah, I was just going to make a bit of a point about that financial burden. It depends because the people, every pensioner or scheme member is in such a different position. We proceeded at risk, so government issued framework to deal with it, and then previous government removed that framework, and there wasn't any framework in place for a period of time. So we brought a report to authority about proceeding at risk. That was before some issues. There are still some issues around taxation for members where they will pay tax. So if they're already a member and now they're subject to more pension contribution or benefit, how do they deal with that? Because that should have been dealt with in the year that it was incurred. So we may get individual members come to the authority saying, well, look, I have to bring the issue to you as my previous employer, and government so say, well, you proceeded at risk. So we may, I would suggest you're going to keep that reserve for some period of years, I would have thought, in there before it even disappears, because it's going to all work its way through. And I do on the impact this is, because what I think I would like to raise with members is the impact this is having on people that have given a life of service to the public. So I know colleagues at the moment who retire on the 4th of January who don't know what pension they're going to have, and they've been waiting for their figures for nearly a year because it's so complicated for some members. So there's a human element clearly in pensions here, that people are giving their service, and as Bev said, trying to track down some of these people, because when we moved from county council to Leicestershire Council and then out to West Yorkshire, they only have to keep certain data for so long. So tracking people has been a significant job. But there's a human element there, just I'd like to sort of say to members. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Well, this report is for notice, but I suggest that considering, I think the sensitivity of it, and I think the importance of it for people retiring in particular, that I'll probably get an update to the committee at some point. Happy with that? Okay, so if we move on to the item 9, which is the health and safety statement.
Damien, the next 2, 3.
Damien?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. So under the Health and Safety at Work Act 1974,
we have a statutory responsibility as an employer to have a health and safety policy that meets our health and safety responsibilities. Part of that is a statement of intent, which indicates our commitment, the commitment of the Chief Fire Officer to the safety of the organisation and to managing health and safety effectively. Members who've been with us for more than a year will remember this came last year and was signed off, and we present the report, the statement of intent to you today. It's available on page 115 of your report pack, and that is unchanged materially from the statement of intent that was presented last year. It has been updated, it's been made a bit more appealing to the eye so we can catch the attention of employees when it's up on the wall at all of our work locations. But it's felt that the strategic intent led by the Chief Fire Officer and supported by our Specialist Health and Safety team remains unchanged for this year. In presenting this report to you, there is a proposal put to members that rather than reviewing this annually, as we have previously, that it is extended to a 2-year review period. And that's really to avoid unnecessary reporting where things may not change, and it feels that that 2-year period will allow us a sufficient amount of time to review our safety management system and make sure that the work directed by the Chief Fire Officer is able to be progressed. For your reassurance, the 2-year period is in alignment with best practice guidance, and that is indicated between a 1 and 5-year process. So it's still on a quite high frequency in order to deliver that review. If there was a significant safety event internally that required a more frequent review, then that would be brought back to members explicitly at a prior date to the 2-year. For your information on the statement of intent, we can obviously change the Chair's signature following today's events. And for your information, the statement of intent is supported by all representative bodies. We've had good engagement with them. For the eagle-eyed members, we may see that there isn't a signature of unison. We're just awaiting on that, but they do endorse and support the statement of intent itself. So quite a brief report. The content stays the same, but the proposal is that we ask members to endorse that current statement of intent and support the approval to move to 2-yearly reporting. But happy to take any questions, Chair.
Any questions? I mean, my only concern was, we need to ensure that nothing gets slipped through during the 2-year period, but you've provided assurance that things would be escalated where appropriate. Members happy with that? Okay. Thank you.
Chair?
And I think you're doing your next one as well, Damien.
I will. It might feel a little bit like deja vu for members. So we'll present the environmental and sustainability statement. Whilst there is no statutory requirement for this, the sustainability, you'll be aware, is one of our key objectives within our community risk management plan, and it is in the new community risk management plan, which we have just closed consultation on as well. To demonstrate our organisation's commitment to environmental management and sustainability, this policy statement is required, and again it highlights how the service and the Fire Authority will discharge its duty to minimise the impact on the environment, which I'm sure everyone will agree is of paramount importance, particularly in our line of work. Again, the policy statement has been reviewed and it highlights that it will remain unchanged. We've made the same updates to make sure that it is visible and will be eye-catching to our employees on station. But again, we recommend that the content remains the same, and this also now undertakes a 2-year review, which will just mean that it will actually be able to deliver some meaningful change within those periods. The same reassurances remain, Chair, in that if there is a significant event or change of legislative requirement or change of direction from the authorities or the Chief Fire Officer's intent, then that would be brought back to members at a more frequent period for consideration. However, again, this is endorsed by all of the representative bodies. We'll make the required necessary changes, and the environmental and sustainability policy statement is available for members to view on page 121. So again, Chair, I'll keep it brief, but happy to take any questions.
Councillor Bailey?
Thank you. I'd probably just agree with the typo. Those concerns on the policy statement itself, it says over the next year we'll review our position on. My worry is that we'll spend 3 years developing a 5-year environmental sustainability plan. This is all going on the wall, so it might just worth possibly change the word to make it a bit more modern and today.
No problem. Absolutely, Councillor, we'll take that on board. Thank you. We'll make sure that's reflected on the plan. The environmental, the 5-year plan is very much underway. It's been work's been carried out over the last year as well. So we welcome. Thank you for that feedback.
Just on that one, Councillor, hopefully when we launch the CRMP, we'll have just a smaller range of updated strategies. So you'll have things like an enabling strategy where the environmental stuff will be in there. We've done a previous report, and as Damien says, we are doing some work already about how do we invest then to meet that goal 6 in your CRMP, but absolutely noted. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's the last agenda item. Thank you all for your attendance. Wishing you all well for the Christmas and New Year. Look forward to working with you all constructively, at least up until the next AGM. Let's close the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.